So we have a list of movies displaying properly, and now we want to use the same logic and apply that to displaying an individual movie with some details. So I'm looking at movies.js right now, and just to save some time, I'm going to copy this entire fetch statement from here and go over to the component where we're rendering one movie, which is called onemovie.js, and in its component didMount, I'll delete all of this and paste in what I just copied and then fix it. So the URL is going to change, and it's not going to be v1 movies. It'll be v1 movie slash, and then I have to append this.props, just like we did before, match.params.id. Okay, so that's the correct URL. Now, what else do we have to change here? We definitely want to add a couple of things to our state, so we'll have isLoaded, and that will default to false, and error, which will default to null. Okay. So this stays the same. This stays the same. Here it's not movies. It's movie singular, and it's JSON.movie singular because that's our wrapper in the JSON we're feeding back. And that looks good. Okay. Now down in our render, let's extract the variables we want. So we want const, and we want movie. We'll extract that to a local variable, isLoaded, and error. And they all come from this.state is equal to this.state. There. So now we have 3 local variables, which means we can do things like this. We can first of all do a little bit of logic. So back in our movies.js, in our render function, we had this kind of stuff. So let me copy that because we can use that same logic here. And go back to onemovie.js and have it like this. And then of course we have to have a closing parentheses right down here. And that should fix the errors. Let's format it, and let's go back up and fix our if statement. So that will be fine. If there's an error, display that. If it's not loaded, display loading. That's fine. Now, let's clean this up. We don't need to go this.state.movie because back on line 33, we extracted a local variable movie from the state. And we don't want to display the ID here. But what we can do instead is maybe put the year after the title of the movie. So I'll put an opening parentheses and then movie.year and a closing parentheses. And that looks good. And underneath that, I want to display the MPAA rating and also the genres, if there are any. Okay? Now, there's a problem with that right now. I want to use the map function to go over the genres. And if you recall, I actually simplified the way that our JSON was being displayed, so it wasn't returning an array. And if it was an array, I could have just used the map function here. But I like to do things in a way that makes sense to me. And if you don't, you can go back and modify your REST API to return the genres as an array, but I like to do it this way. So I'm just going to first of all make sure that the movie has some genres, because right now only one movie in our database has genres. In my case at least, that's The Shawshank Redemption. So I'll just say if movie.genres, if that is set, then I'm going to do something. Otherwise, I'm going to default the value of movie.genres, try that again, movie.genres will just be an empty array. Otherwise, I'm going to convert it to an array, and I can do that using the standard JavaScript syntax, which is as simple as movie.genres is equal to object.values, and we convert our JavaScript object, movie.genres, into an array. And now it's an array. So that means I can do something with it. So down here, after the title, I want to display, first of all, on the left-hand side of that portion of the screen, the MPAA rating. So I'll use Bootstrap's div and its class, and of course I have to use class name because I'm in JSX, is equal to float start. And inside of that, I'll just display, and I'll do it in small text, movie.mpaa rating. And before it, I'll just say rating. And then over on the right-hand side, so I'll use div class name equals float end, I'll display the genres, if any. And that means they have to exist. So I do that using the same map logic we did when we were listing all movies. And now that I have genres in an array, I can do that. So movie.genres.map. And I'm going to pass it two things. M will be the current iteration of the array, and I'm also going to pass it the index. And I'll show you why in a moment, okay? And that is equal to the arrow function, and open parentheses. And inside of that, I'm going to put a span in. I'll make it as a nice little bootstrap badge. Span, class name equals badge, bg-secondary. And I'm going to give it a little bit of margin on the right-hand side. So ME for end, and I'll just use one space. That'll be big enough. And now I'll have the name of the current genre. And I pass the index because if you recall, anytime we're doing this sort of mapping or listing through things in React, it expects to have the key attribute. And I actually don't have a key here, so I'll just pass index, and it doesn't need quotes. Index, like that. Now, because I floated start and floated end, I have to clear fix so things don't get all messed up on the screen. Div class name equals clear fix. And then, just to make things a little more attractive, I'll put an HR in there, which I can leave that way, or I can do it this way, which is a little less text, so I'll do it this way. Now, let's clean some things up. We don't have to use this.state because we have a local variable movie. We don't have to use this .state here either. And maybe between these two, I'll put in another row with a TD, and I'll put it strong like the rest of them. Description. And then I'll write the description here, which is just movie.description. Okay, so this should work. Unless I have a typo somewhere, everything should display as expected. So let's go back to our web browser, and let's list our movies. And first of all, I'll go to American Psycho, which I know doesn't have any genres in the database. And that looks right. There's the title, there's the year it was published, and this remains empty over here. But if I go back to movies and choose one that has genres, it has two, I believe, they show up as drama and crime here. And that's pretty straightforward. Now, obviously, if you wanted to put more information on this table, you're more than welcome to do so because we have more information about the given movie in the database. But this should make it clear to you how you can do that sort of thing. All right, let's move on. And we'll take care of categories next, to display a list of categories from the back end, and then filter, ultimately, when you click on a category name, will show only the movies that match that particular genre, which means I'm going to have to go add genres to every movie, or at least to a few more. But we'll get started on that in the next lecture.